The electrical transmission grid is vital as it powers our entire society, but open, up-to-date and accessible data of our grids is lacking. So what if I told you that you could easily map your own country's grid on OpenStreetMap and have an impact on decarbonising our energy systems and achieving full electrification? In this video we will show you how to map power towers, lines and substations in OpenStreetMap using the ID editor. So let's get started. So now the first thing that you can do is go to our website and then go on our starter kit and essentially go to our ID starter kit that is at the top here, which is the starter kit that we'll be following today. So step one is basically to create an OpenStreetMap account or sign in if you already have one, and just by clicking here. So if this is the first time that you're using ID, you might run into this little message which gives you the option of starting a walkthrough or just to simply edit now. So now you're in ID, but you want to map power infrastructure. So you can basically go back to our starter kit page, and here you can select the good first lines and press on it, and it basically is a spreadsheet that we've created with a bunch of good first power lines and their coordinates. So basically here what you would do is choose one of the lines, and so for example I'm going to choose this one in India, and so just copy, Control C, and then basically you want to go back into ID, and here in the search you can essentially paste the coordinates, enter, and that's going to move you to that tower and that good first line. So here you can basically familiarize yourself a little bit with ID, and here I've got essentially all of the data layers, but you can technically switch it off by going into map data, and here you've got all of the different data layers, and you can disable all and only keep power features, but for now I'm going to enable all of them. So how would you continue this line? So the way to do this is basically pressing on the tower, and then you can press A on your keyboard, and that's basically going to continue the line like this. Another way of doing this is pressing on line, then pressing on the tower, and essentially just creating a new line from that tower. But I recommend pressing on the tower A because then you're continuing the existing line. And so here you can see that there's a tower, and if it's a bit unclear sometimes or even not visible, you can essentially change the imagery by either pressing B on your keyboard or going here to the right, background settings, and here you've got Bing, Esri and Mapbox, which are the main ones that we'll be using, and you can essentially switch to see if any one of them is better. So clearly Mapbox here isn't the best, so I'm just going to stick with the Bing one. And essentially here you can basically follow the line. So now if you look behind, you see this line is going in this direction, so it's probably going to follow that direction. And as you can see here, the next tower is here. A tip to locate towers is to actually look for the shadow, because the tower itself is many times harder to see. So now what you do is basically press on the tower and place a node like this. So you press a little circle. Now you can basically try and look for the next one, which is here like this, and like this, and you can try and continue this until either you can't see any more or you end up at a substation. Now let's say that you're done. What is important is to also tag these as power infrastructure. So what you do is escape. So here the line is actually already tagged with power line because we essentially extended it by clicking on A on your keyboard. But if you created a new line from the previous tower, so basically by doing like this, then the way that you tag this line as a power line is basically just clicking on the line and then going here and typing power line like this, and basically you've tagged the line as power line. So now the actual line that you've extended is already tagged as power line. But how do you tag the nodes here, the dots that you've placed, as power towers? Now technically you could individually tag them like this and then go into power tower and high voltage tower like that, and as you can see you've placed the tower. But if you extended the line a lot and have many towers, there is a much better way to do this, which is basically to press on the line and then do Control down on your keyboard, and essentially as you can see it selected all of the nodes on the line. This means that you need to be careful because it's also selected all of the pre-existing nodes which were tagged as high voltage tower or inside of the substation as power switch or portal, which you don't want to tag as power towers. So here you can do is essentially remove this one, and you can remove all the other ones, but since I'm tagging them as high voltage towers, it doesn't really change anything. And then essentially just go here, type high voltage tower, or already have it here, like that. And as you can see, it's tagged the 3 towers I just placed, and all the other ones are already tagged, and it didn't change here the other tag. Now, one tip when editing with ID is that sometimes you might by accident be extending a line like this and essentially snap it to a road or a building, or in this case a river like this, and essentially continue, which is a mistake. Now to avoid this, what you can do is essentially hold Alt on your keyboard like this, and as you can see, it's not going to attach itself to this way, so to this river in this case, and you can continue without worrying that it will attach. But all of these little hacks you can actually find in help and then keyboard shortcuts. And over here, you've got a bunch of different keyboard shortcuts, which will make you much more efficient and also avoid making some mistakes. If you're uncomfortable mapping lines, then don't worry, because you can also help out by simply placing towers. So essentially what you could do, for example here, and this is especially the case if you're unsure about the routing and which tower connects with which one, what you can do is press on a pre-existing tower, for example, like this, and then Control C, so just copy it, and then I can see here that there's one tower like that, like this, another one here, and so what you can do basically, another one here, like that, and just placing towers is absolutely fine and is a very good way of helping the community, because then a more experienced mapper, for example, can go on and actually map the line. Now I'm just going to go through another example with you. So here basically I can just copy this, go back to ID, and then basically paste like that, enter. And then here it's a bit unclear, so maybe you can change the imagery. Maybe Mapbox in this case is more clear, but essentially that is a tower, even though it's hard to see. And basically I'm showing you this example because sometimes you'll have very good imagery, so the towers will be very clear, and other times you might see something like this, which is a bit harder. Now you can see the next tower here like that, and the next one is probably here. And so here, for example, you could basically extend it by clicking A like this, and then just placing the nodes like that. Let's say you're done. I want to tag these nodes. Essentially, we do Control down, and all of these are high voltage towers anyway. So we can just search for high voltage towers like this, tag, and then bang, I've tagged these two towers. Now let's say that you follow the line and you end up at a substation. So basically right here, you can see a substation which actually hasn't been mapped. So basically, how do you map this substation? Now what you can do is press here on area and then draw out like this, the substation area, and make sure not to glue it like this on this road. So you can just press on Alt on your keyboard so that here, as you can see, I can't stick it to this road like that, and then basically finish it, and that's the area. Now how do you tag it? You essentially go substation, and it's here, substation, and that's done. You've essentially mapped a substation. Now let's say that you've finished and you want to save what you've done and upload it. What you can do is on the top right here, click on save, and then here you get this page where you can put a comment. So here, for example, I can put continued power line, and then you can add the source. So for example, I used Esri for the background imagery. And then here, if you want to support us, you can add a hashtag. So here it's MapYourGrid. And then you can tick here if you want someone to review your edits. And then just press on upload. Now before uploading, a good thing to do as well is to check in the bottom right here if there's any warnings and issues. So for example, if you use the method that essentially creates a new line, but you forgot to tag it, then here you'll see line has no tags. So if you essentially tag the line like this, power line, you'll see your edits look fine, and then you can safely upload. That's the end of the tutorial, but hopefully your grid mapping journey doesn't end there. If you want to know how to find these unfinished power lines on your own and edit them in ID, then stay tuned for a new video. In the meantime, you can also check our JOSM starter kit tutorial if you want to map even faster and better, as well as our tools and strategies video for JOSM.